Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hiba Youssef.
When I think about the enforcer, it just means I'm telling you, make it happen at all costs. When I think about the translator, again, it's like, okay, I'm telling you how this applies. I think when it comes to the policy, I'm going to go back to what I said at the top, which is there like a spirit flame keeper designation that we can give? What is the policy intended to achieve? And how do we determine that? And sometimes that means that there is an enforcer element to it.
Welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast. I'm Hiba, your host and resident chaos demon sometimes. And I'm really excited for today's episode because we're diving into something every people leader has faced, but no one really wants to admit. Those moments when the policy is super clear, but the right thing isn't necessarily. And you know the ones when doing correct on paper could actually make things worse in real life, when company values maybe clash with the business realities, and when two employees are at odds and both kind of have a point. So buckle up because today we're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to lead when there's no easy answer. And joining me today is Stephanie Schuler. Stephanie is a people-first leader who thrives in the messy, exciting middle of where HR strategy meets reality. With over 15 years of experience across industries like ed tech, healthcare, manufacturing, media, and entertainment, she's led global HR teams, untangled complex employment issues, and built programs that actually work for both employees and leadership. Stephanie has scaled HR and compliance functions, led post-merger integrations, reduced turnover, boosted engagement, and launched people programs that stick. From investigations and performance management to labor compliance and culture work, she has been in the thick of it. And she's deeply committed to mentoring HR pros as they grow in their careers and coaching operational leaders to show up in ways that earn trust and drive results. In short, Stephanie helps build cultures where people actually want to work. And it's an honor to have her on the podcast here today. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
I always get so hype reading people's bios. Like my enthusiasm gets like higher and higher as the bio goes on. Because I'm like, yes.
Oh my gosh, me too. I was super excited to learn more about the Stephanie person that you were talking of. So
wait, that's not you? Just kidding. It's definitely her, everybody.
No, it's my AI agent.
Too real. That is too real. You and I joke.
No.
There's going to be a day where like our AI agents are just talking to each other and you and I don't even get a chance to talk anymore. Let that day be when I'm not on this earth anymore, honestly.
Thank you.
I just don't want to deal with it. Okay, I'm so pumped to get into this conversation today because I'm a little bit of like a policy nerd. And when people ask me questions about policies, I'm always like, oh, well, sometimes there's like a right answer. Then there's like the gray area. Then there's like this other answer that might actually be the better thing you do. So we're going to get into it today and talk a lot about all of that and more. And I want to start with like my opening question. Like I've been asking every guest, what's one hard truth about work? And I want to hear your one hard truth.
Oh, wow. My one hard truth about work?
You don't just have to have one. Honestly, some people are like, well, I have 10. And I'm like, okay, please just pick one. Just one, please.
Oh my gosh.
A hard truth.
A hard truth about work. That at the end of the day, it is just you. You can work with the friendliest people. You can have the best boss. You can love and be engaged in the mission. But at the end of the day, it is just you. And you have to make sure that in any role that you're in, that you're looking out for your best interest. Because if you don't, no one else will.
I love that. And so many HR people need to hear that. We're always putting everyone first, honestly. Everyone.
It is really true.
And what's that really sick joke? I hate making it, but it's actually so fitting. Like if you drop dead tomorrow, your job would be posted by the end of the day.
It is sad that I have been, as an HR professional, in those circumstances where you are literally coordinating the hours for someone and you are talking with the recruiter about when is the appropriate time to repost a job. So it is true.
Well, we can come back for another episode on that because that is some grim reality. Someone recently on TikTok was like, hey, are you going to do any like optimistic episodes soon? Or like everything seems to be like really hard and dark. And I'm like, yeah.
I mean, it says I hate it here. So, it feels like you're in the right space.
Things are dark, but we're going to get through them together, which is like what today's episode is all about. So I'm going to start with my intro question. Policies often aren't written for edge cases. What do you do when the edge cases are the ones that actually matter most?
Yeah, I love that question. Honestly, I would love for more HR professionals to start thinking about policies for really what they are. It's almost like a stereotype of how you're predicting your employees are going to act, or a hypothesis or a
Mm,
best guess. And I want you to think about it that way because then that makes you, I think, more likely to actually challenge it when it doesn't work out, right?
yeah.
When you think about policies, you are going out and you're trying to say that on average, if we follow this, we should get the right outcome, right?
Mhm,
So it's
mhm,
really important to be clear on what the intent is of the policy. When I think about those edge cases, it is where that letter does not appear, the letter and the application of the policy does not match the situation and really give you the intent that you were searching for. I went to law school, and one of the things that one of the professor said early on was, the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. And I truly believe that applies with policies as well. So, what was really the spirit behind the policy? And if you're going through and you're looking at applying a policy and you're saying to yourself, all of the alarm bells are going off that it is not right, then
mhm.
stop looking at the letter and start getting down to what actually needs to happen and back up from there.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I also forgot you went to law school. I should have put that in the bio too.
Oh my God. At some point, it's just bragging, right? I'm playing.
Yeah, that's the whole point of me bragging about you because you're spectacular. No, that's such a good point about law. And I mean, I feel like do you feel like what you learned in law school like informs a lot of your HR practice?
Oh gosh, it actually really does. Especially when I started off, I wanted to do criminal law. And I wanted to do it on the defense side. I worked with death row inmates and I interned with them. This is before I was an attorney, but I interned with them, and it was looking for a reason to justify a sentence less than death. And in that, it was all of the like examining the witness statements and looking at the jury testimony, or not jury testimony, juror statements, and reading through testimony and really looking at how do you justify a different outcome that is also fair and gets you to the same point, but that spares this person their life.
Oh my God, remind me to like never debate you. Like today's a conversation, just to be clear, Stephanie, I cannot debate you. I'd be so scared.
I
You'd be
think you do
so good.
just fine. I've seen you
I'm,
in action and you
oh,
might have missed your calling.
I always joke I could have been a fun defense lawyer because I would be like so dramatic in court and the judge would be like, ma'am, calm down. Like you don't need to be on the dramas. But no, like that is so wild that you did all of that and then went into HR because so much of what we do is like informed by the law, but so few of us actually understand the law or have like any sort of legal framework,
Hmm.
which like drives me nuts. But
Yeah.
okay, on to my question because I feel like this happens a lot where we're writing policies and I'm always thinking of the edge cases. Like I'm always like,
Hmm.
okay, so and so is going to do this or this person's not going to that's not going to fit for this person. But have you ever followed policy knowing it could cause harm?
I actually have. I know.
Same.
Cringe moment, right?
No, same. Honestly, I feel like all of us have.
I have. In the moments where I have done it, what I'm proud of and what I would encourage folks to do is look, there are going to be times where unfortunately you might have to fly the flag, right? You've got to disagree and commit.
Yeah.
Before you get there, at least be the person who disagreed. At least be the person who went
Hell
and
yeah.
identified the issue and went forward and advocated. In my case, to date myself, it was going back like 10 plus years. And it was a transgender employee, and she wanted to just use the bathroom that identified with her gender. And after advocating to my boss, advocating to legal, the decision came down to what do we have to do legally in the state to be compliant. And so that was the lens that the organization took for whether there would be harm. I took the lens of this person's dignity. And it was something that I held with me. And whenever I had a moment to revisit it, I did. And maybe a year or so later, I was able to get that decision revisited and allow her to go and just use whatever restroom she wanted to use.
It's so wild sometimes when we're like disagreeing about these things. Like I'm almost like I want it on record that I don't agree with this. And I feel like sometimes employees are like, oh, but like HR decided that. And sometimes I really want to whisper, like, if only you knew I didn't want that decision.
Yes, it's almost like Key and Peele. I don't know if you ever used to
Yeah.
watch them, and they
Yeah.
would have Obama's anger translator. I think HR should have like our own little anger confidentiality translator to be like, I did not come up with this.
This was
And
not my idea.
exactly, exactly.
Don't complain about it. I feel like my employees now know me well enough to know when something's my idea and when it's not my idea. And then they
Mhm.
just like don't approach me when they know it's not my idea. And I'm like, thank God. Like I made it clear to them, like, this is not it. But I mean, I've been there. I feel like every HR person has been there where we've had to write a policy knowing it doesn't always work for everybody. And
Mhm.
I think the second piece of that you said, like, you really sat with it and you went back a year later and said, can we revisit this?
Mhm.
That's like
Never
such good
stop.
practice. Yeah.
Everything changes every day. And the more cases and things that come up and information and knowledge, you network and you learn more from others' experiences as well. Just continue to advocate.
Yeah, it's tough though in that moment. Like I hate the phrase disagree and commit, maybe because like I'm a tiny bit stubborn. So like I want to disagree and I really want everyone to commit to what I'm doing, not what, so I've been like working on it personally. It's a never ending trait. My mother said I was a stubborn child as well. So I think I just like carried into adulthood. But no, you're right. Just like I'm always like, put it on record. I did not want this. Or like in the
Mhm.
meeting notes, I'll be like, HIPAA disagreed.
I love it.
But this is the decision we went with, just to make it clear. So like, I mean, I've been in situations where someone comes back to me and they're like, well, why did you decide this? And I have to be like, hey, let's take a moment. Let's revisit the meeting notes on this X day where I
Mhm.
said specifically, because I don't want to be like the I told you so person. But when someone comes at me and they're mad at a decision that I never made, and it's especially if it's like an executive you work with, it's like, hey, let's
Mhm.
revisit the notes. I have the receipts. It says I
Yes,
did not decide that.
exactly.
And it
Exactly.
brings
I love
me
that.
to my next question, because I feel like this is hotly contested. Who should have the power to override policy? The manager, HR, leadership?
Oh, Heba, I'm going to give you the lawyerly answer, which is
Yes.
it depends. It
Oh,
depends, right?
okay.
I know, right? I think that there's a difference between overriding an entire policy and making
Yep.
an exception. And
Okay.
I do feel that there are not enough managers who are both empowered and given a successful framework to make an exception.
Yeah.
And so, in that regard, I think you've got to look at who's closest to the decision. What are the risks that are involved? In overriding the decision or the policy. And those risks are both from a culture perspective, a business perspective, a management, like a practicality perspective, day to day. What is this going to look like? And there are some times where you're able, as a manager, to be able to advocate and say, hey, this is my team. I'm looking at a small exception. It's going to have minimal impact. And if HR is aligned with it, then go for it and do it. I think that there should also be some times where you shouldn't even have to check into HR. That gets very blurry for folks,
Mm,
especially as HR continues to fight to have a seat at the table.
yep.
But a lot of things that are really close to home, I want managers to feel comfortable owning that. PTO, attendance, even like dress code, like all of these policies that were really written for a wide variety of folks at a company
Yeah.
that can be 100, 2,000, 10,000, who knows, many people big, but your team and your group, you're the person who knows best how that's going to work.
Yeah, overriding policies is so funny to me because I get like kind of mad when certain people want to do it for like reasons that I don't think are justified versus like the
Mhm.
example you're giving where like a manager knows their team best if there's like a sensitive PTO situation. Like we have kind of a loose policy around if you're going to be out, you need to like put your PTO in at least 2 weeks minimum. Like
Mhm.
say like someone decides last minute, hey, I'm really struggling or I really need to go somewhere. Like I don't want the manager to have to come to me and be like, hey, they put it within the 2 week deadline. What do you think I should do? I'm going to be like, you know your team best. If this person needs to take that time off, like you are an adult, use your best judgment.
Exactly. You know what you can balance with your team, what you can't
Yep.
balance, how you're going to cover, what's going to happen. And I don't think we give enough folks flexibility on the front end, but we demand so much adaptability and resilience from folks on the back end. And I think there's got to be a better closing of the gaps. And your managers are the folks who can do that for you.
Yeah. You got to empower them though. Like so few managers are empowered in that way. They're just like stressed from so much work.
Because honestly, we really do in many ways, like take a handbook, we show managers where it's at, we do a
Yep.
training, and then when they call us, we're just reading from a handbook.
Yeah.
And we're saying, oh, well, this is what the handbook says. And you go to the manager. Well, how was that helpful? The manager can read. The
Yeah.
manager can find out what the
So
policy
true.
is. Like, what value have we added there?
Yeah. Or my least favorite situation is when an employee goes and reads the handbook and then goes, hey, we don't have a policy on this very specific thing.
Oh,
What's
gosh.
our policy? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a policy about that. And I have to go write a policy. I got to go like make sure it's fair across the board. Like,
Mhm.
The handbook is fascinating to me.
It really is. It really is. But, it's there again to help guide us. And I think that the more for both employees and managers that word guide can be there to help give you the framework for success. That's what's going to really be helpful for folks.
Versus like, here's exactly what you do. But it's so interesting because like when I think of policies, the things that come up the most is like exceptions and like, is something fair? And I think like consistency and fairness, they don't always look the same. So like, which one would you choose when they're in conflict?
I'm going to answer the question I want to answer.
Okay, I love this. I love this.
No.
It's
But
almost like you're a lawyer at some point or something, It's almost like...
I think that it's first defining fairness and what that really looks like.
Yes.
We've got to step away. Even today in 2025, so many HR folks and managers think that fairness is sameness, and that is not true. And actually shooting for sameness is what's going to get you into trouble with accommodations. It's what's going to get you into trouble sometimes inadvertently, even with discrimination. Like you've got to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. It's also a reason why I don't like hypotheticals when I'm talking about HR. I like a consistent approach, though. I like sameness in approach. What are those key factors that I need to consider anytime I'm looking at a policy to apply to make sure that even if I have different outcomes, I'm able to stand behind it? And you're able to stand behind it when if at the end of the day, your decision, whether it is popular or unpopular, you're able to explain it clearly. You're able to explain it I'm going to say confidentially. You're able to explain it without having to implicate too much of the specifics because it's principled. You had a problem you were trying to solve. You had an application that you went through, and based off of the results, you have outcome A, B, or C, and that should take you there. I think if you're looking for everything to be the exact same, it's just a cop-out. It's an easy approach, and it's getting you nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. I like think about fairness and consistency quite a bit because whenever someone's like, can I get an exception to this rule? Or what do you think about this? Let's do it differently this one time. The thing I always say is like, okay, here's how we've historically done it. If we do it differently this one time, here's how this impacts us moving forward. And I feel like once you explain that very clearly also to like executives who might always be asking for an exception or might always be asking for us to like change the policy every time there's a different circumstance, I think then it becomes really clear to them and crystallizes to them, oh, we are trying to apply a consistent approach rather than like what you said, like always just defaulting to like fairness is the same approach.
Yes. I like to tell managers, even executives, let's take your worst employee, right? Let's call her Felicia. And so if this were Felicia.
Poor Felicia.
I know, poor Felicia, bye Felicia. And right now it's hi Felicia.
I know.
Yes. Hi, Felicia, right? I'm your worst employee, supposedly. If it were her standing in front of you, how would you do this differently or the same?
Wow.
And if you can say with your worst employee, I know people hate hearing that terms, but I'm talking about your lowest performer, the person who's the most attendance issues, what have you. If you can say that you would do the exact same thing, I'm way more interested in the conversation about the exception.
That's such a good point. I never thought about that because so often when we talk about policy issues, people will be like, well, they're a top performer, so we should make this exception. Yeah. And I'm like, ugh.
Look, I think I think attendance can be a place where if you've got someone who is a top performer, who is always on time, who is asking for something, maybe a little like, hey, I can't work overtime this time, or can I come in 5 minutes? I think you work with that. But I think there's a difference between that and, oh, well, they're my best performer, so everything goes out the window with them.
Yeah. Which we see a lot of like young and inexperienced managers do. And often sometimes like CEOs who don't understand their top talent or like what our talent strategy is. Well, let me just default to their top performer, give them everything because I can't make them unhappy.
Yeah. And even your best performers, they honestly see that because your best performers tend to be astute. And if they sense that there's unfairness, even if that they are the benefactor of that, they do not like it.
Yeah, they don't
and
start to feel like that.
Exactly. They don't want to be that person.
No. But how do you keep those exceptions from actually turning into favoritism? Because I've like worked in places where like the favorites got everything. That was just like the standard, like, oh, they're a favorite, they'll get it. Oh, the founders love them, give it to them. And I was always like, we should not be doing this.
Transparency is something that I practice a lot, and I encourage folks to practice transparency combined with real talk. When you're looking at an exception, especially if it's something that's going to have a visible impact, don't hide behind it and use, confidentiality. This is an HR moment and we can't talk. Like, what can you work with your HR partner? What can we talk about? What can we actually bring up in this moment to to bring folks behind the veil, kind of like a Wizard of Oz moment. And I think the more that folks are expecting a culture of accountability and transparency, then that's what limits favoritism. Again, can you stand up and talk about it in front of any employee and explain it really clearly?
Yeah. I also think like employees are smart. They see it. Just like you said, like when someone gets treated like a favorite, people will see that. They will talk. Like, I just think human beings are naturally inclined to say to one another, oh, that person's like clearly someone's favorite because they get everything. And that's like the slippery slope where I think like you can lose trust so fast if you're constantly making exceptions for one person who then suddenly gets called the favorite and everything.
And I don't think, I don't want to advocate that anytime an exception is made, you're now kind of sitting out and defending publicly or discussing publicly with all employees. But I do think when you have those employees that have that moment where they're coming to you and saying, hey, I'd like to learn more about this decision, be open to it, set the framework. Here's what I can talk to you about. Here's what I'm not able to talk with you about. And then for what you can, like, go hardcore on it and provide them with the insight that they need, not with the goal of getting them to agree with a decision, but with the goal of getting them to understand your process for how you went about considering it.
Yeah, because then they'll trust you even more. Like that transparency just increases trust tenfold. Where, I always say like we in HR are potentially starting from like the negative with employees. We don't even start from like zero. We don't even start from like a neutral. I think we start from the negative. And so everything we do, every step we take has to build the trust of the employee. And so when you are making decisions, when there are exceptions, when you roll out a new policy, really taking them behind the veil, like you said, and explaining, why are we doing this? Why right now? Like, who is impacted? Why? I think goes so much further than just thinking like, oh, I've told the key players what they need to know, because there's always an employee that's like, but I wanted to know. And sometimes they deserve to know.
I agree.
Other times they don't deserve to know. And that's when I say that's none of your business. That's called nunya. Just kidding.
Sometimes folks need to hear that though.
Sometimes folks don't do that. On the note of folks that need to hear things, what do you say to a CEO who only wants things by the book when you know it could backfire with employees?
I try to get to the heart of what is the problem that they are trying to solve from. Whenever that comes up, there is something. And usually it is very narrow. And they have determined that this is the shotgun approach to hitting that target. And it's going to hit that target. It's also going to have other unintended casualties. Oh my gosh, that's a violent I apologize for that. I don't know if that one needs to be recorded.
We're trying. Do you want to cut that metaphor? Do you want to do it again? Like, it's okay. I'm trying to stop using war metaphors because it turns out I use a lot of war metaphors, and I was like, this is not good.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, the other metaphor is that they're trying to use a hammer.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay, you're trying to use maybe a hammer or, oh gosh, what is it? What is it against a scalpel? Like, you need a scalpel, but sometimes folks are going in there with a hacksaw. There we go. You're trying to go in with a chainsaw when really what you need is a scalpel. So I'm trying to get at what is the true problem that needs to be solved and corrected for. And the more that you can understand that, that's where you can start having in the conversations about all of the other harms and risks that they may not be considering, the cultural harm, the inconsistent application.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are monetary risks depending on what policies they're looking at. Discrimination and retaliation, those are things that can come up as well very easily once you start getting very, very, not linear, but when you get very strict with one policy and not with others, there's a reason. And sometimes I found even that the policies folks want to be the most strict with are those that are going to position you for the highest risk of having some of those unintended adverse impact effects with your organization.
Yeah, I was just thinking like CEOs don't want to play by the book. I haven't met many of them, to be honest. I just haven't met many CEOs that are like, yeah, rules, we love them. Even like every CEO who hires HR for the first time is like, ugh, HR, now I have all these rules I have to follow. And I'm like, there's a reason why we have these rules. Like I always like, there's that one podcast with those like tech bros, but they were like, we don't need HR. Like HR is the worst. We're going to run our own companies. And like every time that clip resurfaces every few months, or like some tech bro makes a comment about how you don't need HR, my thought every single time is good luck getting sued.
Yeah.
All you need is one employee to slap you with a threat and a lawyer, and it's game over for you. So good luck.
I found that CEOs like rules for other people. And it's almost like this upside down triangle where they really like rules for the folks at the tip of the triangle and at the base of the triangle. But as you start to go up, that's when they want there to be the least amount of rules. That's when the reasons matter, the exceptions matter. But for everyone else, we want to hold them to the highest standards of all. And it should actually be the opposite way.
Like everyone follows the rules.
The folks who should follow the rules the most are the folks at the top, and those are the ones that we tend to want to give the most exceptions to.
And they're the ones that tend to end up in the news for doing things like dating their subordinates. Like there was another CEO that just got fired for this. Like it came out that he was dating someone on his team, and it was just, I'm like, there's a reason the rules exist. Like you at the top still also have to follow said rules. And when people tend to complain about like executive or CEO behaviors, I almost always find it comes back to like them not following the policy that everybody else has to hold themselves to.
Exactly. Sometimes, I mean, you see that with return to office as well.
Oh my God.
Like how many CEOs have we seen that are living in different countries, or as well, some in different countries, but like in different states.
Yeah.
Exactly. They get to go home 4 days a week, but everyone else needs to be in this office the 4 days that they're at home.
Wild. I'm like, how could I ever get on the stage and be like, everyone has to come into office and then I just sit in my beach home?
Yeah. The camaraderie doesn't seem to apply to them. I don't know why.
No, but also they're so divorced from reality. I'm like, you're so far removed from like what actual reality is. Like, I'm not surprised you're doing this. I think something that's interesting that's come up a few times in this episode so far is trust and how hard it is to build it. But sometimes like protecting the business and the role that we play means breaking the trust with the people that we're like trying to guide. How can we recover from that?
Yeah, I think with that, my experience has been that trust is really broken on two fronts, right? It's either a questioning of your judgment. So like what kind of decision was made? What was the outcome? Or it's a questioning of your character and your integrity.
Ooh.
And so those are two different problems, and you got to figure out which lane you are in. I think if you're dealing with something where it is a matter of your judgment and decision making, it's really good to incorporate, I keep saying transparency, but with that transparency, to give it some teeth, really looking at Life Labs, we talk about a fair framework with our decision making, and whether it is a large scale department decision or a large scale org decision or something that is just for your team, we go through and we determine whether or not something is forthright, is it accessible, is it involved, and is it rigorous, right? So when we're looking at, is it forthright, is it known to all, and is it clear to all? Like the standard, the policy, whatever that is. When we're thinking about the accessibility, have we looked at it, the accessibility and the involved, have we looked at it both through some of these edge cases that we talk about, as far as folks who are going to be impacted, as well as have we either solicited or have we considered different lenses of folks who are going to be directly impacted? And then for the rigor part of it, it's how do we go about monitoring that on a day-to-day basis or on a regular cadence so that we are mitigating any potential bias or mitigating any potential unintended consequences or risks that we are aware of. And so that gives a good framework when I'm talking about transparency, like with your policies and systems and rollouts, especially when it's for decisions that you know may not be well received, for you to have those conversations openly, have a structure around it, and also continue to hopefully build that trust. Now, if it's a character issue, I don't know how much I can help you there. I'm going to say good luck, God bless to that one.
Yeah, that's tough. Like when people really start to question you as a leader and your judgment, I think that's one of the hardest bridges to rebuild.
It really is. And even if you are a person of sound character, it's hard to rebuild. It really is. And I think with employees, the other piece I've had this conversation a few times in my career with employees to say, look, I've given you all the information. I've been transparent. We've had this
Mhm.
conversation now one, two, multiple
Five
times.
times.
Yes, so many times, so many times. At some point, if you really do believe that there is an integrity issue, why do you want to be here?
I've had this conversation as well.
And that's something that I do have to sometimes put back on employees. Now, I'm not going to put that on you when you're right.
Yeah, for
But
sure. I'm not gonna be like, I'm not gonna
yes,
gaslight
I'm
you
not going to
into thinking
gaslight an employee, but
we'll not be doing that. We'll
there
not be
does
doing that.
come a time where, it might be that we have, like we've met an impasse and you've got to choose which direction you're going.
Yeah, I always, when employees come to me with like real things that they're complaining about, and I know like we either can't change them or it's a structural thing, or again, it's like an integrity, they'll never regain trust of that person. I have had to have that hard conversation. Like, I'm not holding you hostage here. Let's talk about like, is this where you want to be? And I like my way of going about it is like, I'll support whatever decision you make. I'm not gonna just change my opinion on you. But like ultimately at the end of the day, back to your very first point, like you have to do what's best for you. Like I
Absolutely.
cannot do what's best for you. You have to do what's best for you.
Absolutely. And there are so many times where I have wanted to, like, I wish I could wave a magic wand and make this disappear for you. Here are the reasons I cannot.
Yeah, here's what I cannot do. I mean, it goes pretty far, but God, I have another maybe like particularly juicy question, kind of tricky to ask you.
Mhm.
Um, should we as HR like really play the role of the enforcer of the policy or the translator of the policy?
I love that you give me choices that I do not like because I honestly,
I love that I'm like, I'm going to ask you a tricky question. And you're like,
yes,
false. I don't like any of these questions.
I don't
Yes.
like either of those, right? When I think about the enforcer, it just means I'm telling you, make it happen at all costs. When I
Yeah.
think about the translator, again, it's like, okay, I'm telling you how this applies. I think when it comes to the policy, I'm going to go back to what I said at the top, which is there like a spirit flame keeper designation that we can give? What is the policy intended to achieve? And how
Yep.
do we determine that? And sometimes that means that there is an enforcer element to it,
Yep.
in that if we are getting off track, we've got to go in. And I think I think it's a partnership. There are times where you've got to get, the heavy weight behind you and those decisions as HR. So you've got to have that credibility with multiple leaders cross-functionally
Yep.
within well, I already said cross-functionally. And then I think there are times, yeah, where if someone's coming to you and it's via translator, great, but make sure you understand what you are translating and solving for.
Ooh.
Whenever someone comes to me with a policy question, I learned this early on. Do not just answer a policy question and, oh, this is what it means, without asking, so tell me more about why you came here. Because
Yes.
what may start off to you as a question about just simple dress code might be a question about sexual harassment. So it is really, and that is a true story that I will not get into right now.
I
But
can see that so quickly.
but make sure you understand why the policy is being, or why the policy interpretation is of interest in the moment.
Yeah. Whenever employees ask me about policies, that's like when my radar goes off. Where I'm like, "Ooh, I wonder why they're asking that." Ooh, they're asking a lot of questions about like when their 401k, what they can do. Like, I'm like,
Yes.
"Ooh, maybe they're planning a move." But like, I'm never gonna go share my instincts openly. But like, I'm always like, I should ask follow up because no one just like wakes up and is like, I'm gonna ask a question about that one policy, right? Like,
Yes.
there's probably a motivation as to why they felt like
Mhm.
this moment, this question right now, I have to ask it.
Yes. And just like an easy go to on that is, I'm happy to direct you to that policy. It's kind of tricky, or there's sometimes a lot of nuances with it. Is there anything specific that you're looking for, so I can either direct you more closely or give you additional resources or guidance that might not be contained in the policy? And
Ooh,
people
that's
will usually open up to that.
I like that a lot. That is so nice. I'm gonna start using that phrase. Is there anything else I could like that? That's fire. Now, I do that sometimes. Other times I'm like, do I really want to know what else they're gonna ask me? Like,
Look, the most dangerous question an employee ever asks is, can I see my employee file?
oh
I
yeah.
There is a reason that they want to look at that file. And
Oh,
you
for
better
sure.
find out what that reason is.
There's always a reason, from every policy to why the handbook to we just went through the process of having everyone sign their handbook this year. And then
Hmm.
to make it easier too, I wrote a guide. Like the handbook is like very legal sounding language. You know this. So I literally
Hmm.
told our employees, this is like the legal sounding language that has to go in there because it's a handbook. I also wrote you all a guide to explain all the policies within our terms. That's still just so all of you understand. And I thought that was like a really interesting exercise. And since then, I haven't gotten many questions about policies. So I'm just like,
I
maybe I
like
did,
that. That's a good
maybe I did,
tip.
maybe I did something right, or maybe all of them have questions and they just don't want me to know because they know I'm going to follow up and be nosy. Like, why are you asking that? What do you mean? But no, I mean, it's just so interesting because I feel like HR attracts a lot of like rule followers, because what people don't understand, and I mean you do because you went to law school, like a lot of our job, there's like regulations around it, there are laws around the things we do, and I feel like that's lost on a lot of people in corporate America, especially like startups, because they're like, we're just a startup, we can do whatever, and it's like,
Yes.
no, you still are beholden to the law of the land, which like your HR person kind of has to know. So I have this analogy that I say a lot, that like HR follow, like a lot of rule followers end up in HR. But I'm
Hmm.
like, really curious from you, because I know I would never describe myself as a rule follower. Have you ever broken any of the rules and been glad that you did it?
I love breaking rules.
Hell
I
yeah.
really do.
You
When
are not the
earlier,
rule follower. Me neither. Me neither. Hands up. I don't care.
yes.
I will not follow them.
Early in my career, I loved breaking the dress code, and I loved doing it to prove a point that it is overwhelmingly a silly policy. I understand
Yeah.
why we have them, right? Again, those edge cases are the like, inevitably someone is going to come in and you're going to say, "Oh my, what is happening?" Like, let's have, a frame for the conversation. But sometimes, I mean, when you start talking about unnatural hair color, or I had, hose, you have to wear hosiery if you're a woman. Like, what does that even mean and look like? If your fingernails can't be a certain length and things along those lines. Now, granted, when I was encountering these policies, it was in a space where some of them were related to like patient care, and like there
Yes.
were actually reasons for that. But then why are we talking about this at the call center for someone who's sitting at the phone all day? It's so, yeah, no, dress code is one that I love to break. And then with my employees, PTO and time off.
Mm.
I'm going to do a disclaimer. I will not say whether that applies to my current company or not. But what I mean with that is that I want to, I talked about like giving folks flexibility. I try not to nickel and dime our employees
Yeah.
as it relates to time off. So if you're going to jet out an hour early, it's okay for you not to use that hour of PTO when I know that you have worked 2 hours longer the day
Same. Yeah.
before, right?
Yeah.
So on my end, I'm going to try to be as flexible with you with your PTO as you are with me. And
Yeah.
so that for me is because what I'm looking at it as is, yeah, it's a policy violation technically, but I'm really looking at it as, how do you like weigh the benefits and like the return on investment that you get, right? So I've got the small asset PTO where I'm already getting the time. I've already paid for it, so to
Yeah.
speak. But what I can get is loyalty and discretionary effort to like 100, tenfold, however many fold, with just small tweaks on, don't worry about that today because I've seen what you've done for me here. Take the time, take the afternoon, and let's move forward and continue, keep doing great work. And for
Yeah.
that, I will do, again, I talk about talking about favoritism earlier. I'll do that with any employee who is giving me that discretionary effort.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, the putting PTO for like a doctor's appointment in, I'm just like, I'm not going to do that. You
Yeah,
already know you're working extra hours. There's like very few people who are only putting in 8 hours a day, it feels like, anymore. I feel like a lot of people are going above and beyond, and that's maybe a topic for a separate podcast, because like maybe they shouldn't be going above and beyond.
yes.
But I'm like, for a doctor's appointment, I don't need you
Yeah.
to put PTO in. Just go to the doctor and come back.
It's different if you're going to miss, like, I've got this webinar that I like, if I'm going to miss this webinar that we're
Yeah.
recording and it's
Yeah.
a big, that's different, right? But if at the end of the day, you're missing kind of like your flexible time during the day where you're managing your priorities, I'm trying to work with you as much as I can.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of rules in HR deserve to be broken, because they're I have found a lot of time, and you can definitely correct me on this if I'm wrong, that the laws are like the bare minimum. And
Oh,
and then when you're following them and you're writing policies about the bare minimum, you miss the opportunity to like actually go above and beyond for your employees. And so when I think of like breaking laws, I think of not breaking laws. Sorry, I'm not breaking any laws. Let the record show, not breaking any laws here. And just like a little bit of, but like when you go above and beyond, or you're like breaking a policy and actually doing more for the person, that's where I think like we have a lot of potential that like sometimes we just are encouraged to do the bare minimum with like regulations, and we could do so much more.
Heba, it's like you're my spirit animal because the policy
Yeah.
and the law is the floor and the culture is your ceiling.
Yeah.
And again, as much as we can help fill up those gaps, and a lot of that can be done on a day-to-day basis with your managers, knowing your teams and what makes sense. What is the intent here, and how does this work with application?
Yeah.
And I also want to say, because I'm sure that there are folks watching this in so many different like audiences or like fields and industries and different role types, everything does not work for every company and every role type. And so
Definitely
I
not.
use like PTO as an example. That's not going to work for all roles, that type of flexibility. But somewhere there's something, a policy that can work for your role and your organization, and figure out what are those moments to bring that culture in and have that flexibility.
Yeah. You always have to think about what is the environment, what is the organization. Like when someone's like, well, that's not the right tool for me, or that's policy doesn't work for me. I always say, what works for me is not necessarily going to be exactly what works for you. Like you have to look at
Exactly.
your organization and figure out, and taking into consideration too, like industry, like you said, in healthcare, maybe there are rules about how long your nails are. Maybe there are rules about like your hair has to be in a ponytail in certain industries because your
Mhm.
hair could be a risk. That's not for me. I just do a desk job. I do a knowledge working email based job. Like I have flexibility when it comes to those things, but that's not the case for a lot of people who listen to this podcast. A lot of people who have like frontline jobs too. It's
Mhm.
very different for them.
Exactly.
I want
Exactly.
to end with probably the juiciest question I might have asked all episode, although I've asked you a lot of juicy questions. And I love that you have lawyered me out of them, but it's okay because you answer them in the end. What's one policy in your career that you wish never existed?
I said it, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. It is dress code. I wish that we did not need or have dress code policies, more than them becoming like very, I think they are just havens for cultural discrimination
Yep.
and religious discrimination in particular. I It's like I wish that we really could just have a dress code policy that says dress for your day. And that's it. And that is the expectation. I understand why it does not work. The other piece is that managers, in my experience, who have come to me about dress code policy, it has been because they are trying to overwhelmingly avoid dealing with more serious policy issues. And so the dress code becomes
Hmm.
like this objective way for me to manage someone out, for me to enforce to the letter of the law so that Felicia can go home. And I cannot stand that. So, yes, I wish we did not have to have the need for dress code policies.
I think I might have told you this on like the very first call we talked, but I did a keynote in New York in May, and it was on like bridging the generational gaps in the workplace, like how to think about having 5 generations in the workplace and what does it mean. And I said, I finished and I had like 10 minutes for questions. I was like, okay, what questions do people have for me? And the first question somebody asked, they raised their hand and asked about dress code policies. And they were like, well, Gen Z just has like a different definition of what's professional. And I was like, well, I mean, what is professional?
Look, it bothers my mother to this day if I go to church and I don't have a slip on under my dress. That is just
Love
her
that.
generation. I don't even know where I could buy a slip from anymore, to be quite honest with you.
Amazon,
And
but I hate
I,
Amazon.
you said,
Sorry.
you know what? Everything could be on Amazon. Even
Everything's
like
back. I hate it.
visible tattoos. When you think about
Yes.
this over generations and like the meanings and the frequency, not frequency, but like how much you see it out and about,
Yeah.
completely different. So it really is a shock for some folk to go and see someone with a tattoo and, that's visible. They think of it as unprofessional. And we
Yeah.
are, I mean, that's not even something that crosses my mind these
That
days.
doesn't stop them from doing their job. I mean,
No.
that's like with me where I had the one manager who told me my curly hair was unprofessional. And then like I wore my hair straight for like 10 years at work.
Oh gosh. And the hair is often in the dress code policies that we need to get rid of. And you're
Wow.
right. Like, it's like, what is professional? And then you put these cultural biases into the dress code and you use it to keep people down. Don't
I
get me
hate
started on
them.
the dress code. I do
Okay,
not like
here
them.
you heard it here first. We're getting rid of dress codes. We
Done.
actually we actually had at one company, the dress code was wear whatever makes you comfortable, but please no yoga pants in the office. Was the actual dress code because they were like yoga pants are not like we don't want people wearing yoga pants to work. And I was like, well, they're really comfortable though. Like, well, I don't like them.
Look, they picked a line, they drew it.
They picked a line, they drew it, but I mean, if I feel like everything else was like quite fair. If the one line was no yoga pants, everything else felt really genuinely fair to everyone else. So I liked it a lot
Mhm.
actually. But I mean, I did love my yoga pants, just couldn't wear them to the office anymore. I've had such a fun time with you today. We're definitely going to do this again. I am like envisioning an episode where I bring you like 5 whack laws and I have you help me debunk them, like laws that we should and should not be following at work.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I love
Don't
that
tell
so
anybody,
much.
we're not breaking any laws. To be very clear, Stephanie and I did not
We did
condone
not
breaking
break
did not
any
break any
laws.
laws.
Wait, no, I'm playing. We really
Wait,
didn't
wait.
break any laws.
Oh my God. I can't wait to have you back. You are definitely going to be a hit with the audience and they're going to want to all talk to you. And I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm just so grateful we had time together today and that you entertained me and you answered my cold DM as somebody who like admired you from afar for so long. Then like having you reply to my DM, I was like, yay.
Oh
This
my,
is
that is such an honor because I told you it's like closet, like HIPAA stalker. Not really, but yes, really. So, oh my gosh, I feel like
Stephanie
we just
Schuler.
became best friends.
We just became best friends. Oh my God, did we just become best friends? That's me every episode. It's either me saying that or like me being like, I just cried. And everyone who listens to this podcast, like, she has so many feelings. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I have a lot. And I tend to cry during this podcast. Leave me alone. But no, in all seriousness, thank you. Thank you for talking about like the messy gray area that comes with policies and helping me just talk through how do we get to be better practitioners by understanding that like the policy doesn't have to be everything, that there is some flexibility and we can still maintain like fair and equitable workplaces, even when we have to do things like make exceptions or play in the gray area.
Absolutely. Thank you for
so
having
much.
me.
Of course.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.